Post-colonialist film theory deals with the differences between the highest and lowest members of colonial society, though this representation varies based on the perspective of the director. Post-colonialist films take place in a colonial setting, but have been produced or released after a country's colonial experiences. How the conqueror's culture reigns over the conquered culture, and how the conquered culture copes with, adjusts to, resists, or overcomes this political high pressure is shown and criticized in post-colonialist films. These themes often relate to the continued presence of colonialism within society, even decades after independence. Two films that embody both sides of post-colonialist theory are French director Claire Denis's Chocolat and Japanese director Hayao Miyazaki's Princess Mononoke. Chocolat represents the conqueror's perspective as the protagonist, France, returns to an independent Cameroon, where her French family once held land. The societal divide between the French and Cameroonians is evident to the audience, but less so to France as a young girl. Alternatively, Princess Mononoke shows the conquering of the natural world and indigenous societies by industrial monarchies in a more layered way. This is demonstrated through the ancient gods colonized by Irontown and the Amishi people colonized by the Japanese emperor. Both films are from the perspective of a child, affecting their understanding and reactions to colonialism. There is a clear other in both societies represented, creating a lack of empathy and privileges given to its members. These films are important to study because they demonstrate the societal divide created by colonialism through costume design and composition. They are from different countries, which allows for a greater understanding of how colonialism affects those regions and their culture, specifically through the socio-economic status of the main characters. While it may seem as though characters with a higher social status, such as Lady Eboshi in France, may benefit from the hierarchy, both films give glimpses into how prejudice within the social structure has negatively affected everyone. For those in the highest parts of society, colonialism has prevented them from understanding the struggle of those at the lowest. Even though they come from different geographical perspectives, Denis and Miyazaki show both sides of society to critique the social structure under colonialism. The social structure is most evident in the costume design, which is used in two separate ways for each film. Princess Mononoke frames San as an outsider, with her wearing animal furs and face paint the first time the audience sees her. In this scene, San's face is also covered with the blood she sucked out of Moro's wound, serving to express not only that she and her family are being pushed from society, but also how it has caused pain and violence to occur in their life. She and her family are seen from the colonized perspective as wild and animalistic. However, this scene also features Ashitaka, who is spying on San and Moro. This implies that he is an outsider, relating to his identity as a former Amishi prince who has left his culture to seek out a cure for his curse. The Amishi, seen as non-civilized barbarians, were colonized like the ancient gods, so this first interaction creates a bond between San and Ashitaka. The negative effect created by the social structure under a colonialist society also applies to Lady Eboshi. Miyazaki states that Eboshi went through considerable hardships, and she must feel that Ashitaka's karma is nothing. Her costuming is similar to that of the Shirabayushi, female performers who dance for the gods dressed in men's attire. Through this choice, Miyazaki sets Eboshi apart as another outcast, except she has created her own society through Irontown, where she, along with prostitutes and lepers, is free to be part of the highest members of the social hierarchy. However, the lepers and prostitutes wear clothing that highlights their outcast role in the emperor's society, with short dresses and wraps of bandages, respectively. These characters celebrate their outcast status and treat each other as equals within the society of Irontown. Miyazaki continues to include people who were historically discriminated against to shed light on their little-known history and to add depth to Eboshi's character. While she and the citizens of Irontown have been discriminated against in the emperor's society, it does not give them sympathy for the gods who have been discriminated against in their society. In this way, Miyazaki can further his criticism of post-colonialist attitudes, implying that while all people have been discriminated against to a degree, there still exists an inner hierarchy for many. This is directly related to Japan's role as both a colonized and colonizer nation. Japan had control over many Asian regions during World War II, but would eventually fall under a sphere of influence from the United States. This created an inner hierarchy that still affected Japan into the 1990s, when the country experienced an economic recession. We could say the same principle reflected in Princess Mononoke, where all the characters struggle to survive in their colonialist society that benefits no one except for the emperor. However, instead of helping each other to survive, characters from different parts of the social structure work against each other, believing their people alone should be at the top of the hierarchy. Looking now at Chocolat, the costume design does not show those at the lowest parts of society to be outsiders. Instead, Proté wears clean white clothing similar to what France wears as a young girl. This is done to show the effects of colonialism on the everyday life of Cameroonian servants. France's family wants Proté to fit into their lifestyle, so his clothes represent the white French upper class. However, despite his crisp clothes, Proté is not respected by the Delans family. This is especially apparent when he is seen showering by France and her mother, who do not see him as human enough to care that he is naked. The costume design for him is merely a mask to hide behind in order to appear worthy to France's family. Proté's clothing in colonial Cameroon can be contrasted with Mungo, the American who is living in Cameroon with his son to find his heritage, in the adult France. Both characters wear darker, looser clothing to allude to the newly independent Cameroon. However, much like Proté, these characters are outsiders in the society they are attempting to fit into. France is white and upper class, while Mungo wants to claim Cameroon as his home, but he is American at heart. This can be seen as the colonist perspectives of France and the U.S. enduring in the thought processes of those who claim to be against it. Dennis had a desire to express a certain guilt she felt as a child raised in a colonial world, and this costume design shows how the colonial world still affects Cameroon. Mungo and France want so desperately to be part of a society that is not necessarily theirs to belong to, but their backgrounds of colonialism give them the impression that they could. They show this attempt by wearing casual clothing, which compared to the Delans' crisp formal attire, makes their colonial past much less obvious. However, it is worth noting that France realizes she does not fit into the independent Cameroon, and progressively comes to see her childhood as a paradise lost forever. In Chocolat, the colonizer's perspective is framed sympathetically, but it is not without criticism. Much like Lady Eboshi being allowed to redeem herself, France returns to Cameroon and reevaluates how her family treated Proté and her role in colonialism. From 1960 to 1980, Cameroon enjoyed strong economic growth that Dennis portrays through the seemingly happy people in present-day Cameroon. It can be assumed that Cameroon is more prosperous as an independent nation, something France was never concerned with as a child. In this way, colonialism has made it difficult for her to understand its negative effects on the native Cameroonians, in turn negatively affecting France's relationship with the country she once called home. Now that this social structure has been reversed, she is forced to sympathize with her family's past Cameroonian servants. A large part of post-colonialism is based on land, something that is seen through the sweeping wide shots used in both films. Dennis and Miyazaki are concerned with the impact of colonialism on the environment and its relationship with humans. That said, Dennis uses wide shots of just the natural world, whereas Miyazaki includes Irontown in his wide shots. For Dennis, this is done to represent the native Cameroonians' positive relationship with the natural world, while the French colonists only see it as an option for economic gain. The citizens of Irontown share a similar sentiment, but Miyazaki includes their lifestyle in wide shots to foreshadow the eventual collaboration of the ancient gods in Irontown. The French colonists cannot have that opportunity in Chocolat, so the wide shots serve to reflect on the colonial history. Where Princess Mononoke works to provide an idealized version of the colonists and the colonized in a post-colonialist society, Chocolat takes a more realistic approach to how colonists are affected by their past. Both films criticize colonial social structures and their negative impact on all involved. The Princess Mononoke gets this point across by having all characters represent a discriminated against group, and Chocolat focuses on both the highest and lowest members of society. Social structures change to reflect each society represented, moving into a new period of post-colonialism, which promises cooperation and understanding between the different members of society. Both films suggest that while there are fundamental differences among those members, colonialism ultimately prevents societies from progressing for all involved.